Hi, I'm Doug White, and a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, Russ Boscheman and I had a show called Secure Digital Life. So last night, because we're not going to be here when you're watching, I'm not going to be here when you're watching this. Last night, I went into the crypt, and I pulled out an old episode for you that's like really scary, kids. So today on Dr. Tung's 3D House of Horror, it's Russ and Doug way back in September of 2017 with episode number 31 of Secure Digital Life, which was called Killer Robots. And get this, we were talking that day about Elon Musk and autonomous weapons. Wow. Check it out and enjoy.
This is a Security Weekly production for security professionals by security professionals. Please visit securityweekly.com/subscribe to subscribe to all the shows on our network.
Welcome to Secure Digital Life. If your users are going to keep putting risky stuff on your machine, you're screwed. So, Todd can help us understand the complexity of blockchain.
I was reading through the show notes, man. Oof.
In binary, it would be 001. Who cares? But it's probably not significant anyway. Be like you're looking out through the HAL dot, like, hey, Dave.
It's like Sim, but with,
It would be like Sim.
Instead of AI, it's only.
Today we were going to talk about killer robots, and the reason we were talking about this was because Elon Musk the other day put out an article, or I guess an op-ed, where he got 116 people to sign this and send it to the UN. I guess for Elon Musk, you can send stuff to the UN. I'm like, I've tried sending things to the UN, and then SWAT teams show up. But I mean, basically, he sent this letter to the UN, and he was talking about how we have to stop the weaponization of AI. I mean, it was you sent that in.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting, and as a student myself of posthumanism, this is one of the topics that we talk about a lot.
What is posthumanism?
It's we're gonna get to a little a subset of that when we start talking about singularity later on.
Is it like the Borg?
Kind of. It's just basically when AI, or if AI assumes a consciousness, the ability to think for itself, what is humanity going to do to keep up with it?
Yeah, the Borg.
Yeah. Kind of.
I like the Borg. I was always chearing for them in Star Trek.
Yeah, I like the Borg.
Crush the Federation.
Yeah, until I found out that they superseded the humans when they added that crap at the end of Enterprise or the beginning of Enterprise. Yeah, I know.
We didn't even talk about Enterprise.
No story arcs.
No, I don't think so.
Although Discovery looks pretty promising.
It's just like I am Locutus of the Borg, so we stick with that.
Yeah,
I
like that one too.
We'll be good.
Yeah.
But anyway, so he was talking about this and how that if we allow like AI to get involved in armed conflict, that we really have a great likelihood of Skynet kind of scenarios, Terminators, and all those fun things that we've seen from movies and TV. Sci-fi often precedes sci-fact.
It does, yep.
I mean, Arthur C. Clarke was writing about like laptops and the internet and all this kind of weird stuff back in the 30s and things. He was writing about it, and you've seen all that kind of come back around. But Elon Musk apparently got a little bit nervous about the whole thing and started worrying that we were going to actually be able to allow artificially intelligent weapons to go out hunting people, which really sounds pretty scary. And then if you start thinking about having AI that could hack other AI, so the AI goes after the weapons that are out there, because that would be the natural progression, right?
Yeah. Isn't that what kind of viruses and certain types of malware do right now? Is they develop the ability to circumvent issues that or devices that will prevent it from spreading.
That's Dixie Flatline.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
Dixie Flatline.
If you don't know what Dixie
Gibson,
Flatline is, it's from Neuromancer, and it was Dixie Flatline was a recording of a hacker that was being used to attack the artificially intelligence firewalls of this other stuff in Neuromancer. They were trying to break in, so they actually got this guy who'd been recorded into a system, and they turned it loose. But Musk said, we do not have long to act once the Pandora's box is open. Yeah, I think we've already passed it. It'll be hard to close. Yeah, I think he's a little bit too late with this letter, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, AI is on its way to becoming. In fact, maybe about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, I had read that Facebook was playing with an AI they had to shut down.
Right.
I don't know if that was true or if there was some level of truth to that.
Is that the one that started swearing and turned into a racist?
Yes, that's the one.
Yeah, so they had that one.
They had to power, but they had to power it down, which I find kind of scary. You know, but what happens when, you know, the technology, like what they're developing all these neurocircuits and even quantum computing, which will allow for a computing power far surpassing, you know, what we can perceive right now. What happens when they turn on and it develops instant consciousness? You know,
well,
like,
I think the real problem is that as AI develops, what happens is it becomes so much better than humans.
Yeah.
That we can't even conceptualize what it's doing. And
Right.
suddenly you can't just sit down and say, okay, I'm going to turn this thing off because you don't even know how to turn it off anymore.
Yeah.
And if you actually start AI and you set it loose and say, okay, here's what I want you to do, accomplish the objective. And the AI is like a human, but it's not. And it's smart and it learns and it comes up with new ways of learning that you didn't even perceive. And it says, okay, well, the simplest solution to this problem is just launch all the nukes and we'll sterilize the planet, and then, you know, we'll be good after that.
I had read also a week ago, and this for some reason in the last 2-3 weeks, maybe 4, a lot of these articles have come up with a lot of similarities. Stanford University had taken chatbots, and if you don't know what a chatbot is, it's basically a piece of software written to communicate with humans and other things. So it created these 2 chatbots, and the chatbots had become so advanced they developed their own language that the researchers couldn't understand what they were saying, so they were afraid of what was going to happen, so they powered the chatbots down. So.
They think they powered the chatbots down. Maybe they didn't really powder them down, and the chatbots are back there going beep beep boop, beep beep boop, which means kill those. But I mean, no, they do it. And I mean, AI, the whole premise of AI, I'm going to introduce one thing here, and because I think at this point we've surpassed this even. And this was Isaac Asimov. So way back in the I think it was 1942. Isaac Asimov wrote a short story that led to him writing a whole bunch of books about robots. And he got really hung up on this way back in the 40s, if you can imagine. And he wrote these very famous 3 laws of robotics, which I am going to argue are not going to help. But the first law of robotics was that a robot may not injure a human being. And he had to keep modifying them, too, because people kept finding logical flaws in them, which were great little plot, little plot devices that you could use in science fiction. But a robot could not injure a human being through inaction, allow a human being to come to harm. That was the first law of robotics. The second one was a robot must obey the orders given by a human being, except if it would conflict with the first law. Because, we keep finding these little loopholes in here where Spock asks you to compute pi to the last digit. And I'm like, yeah, whoever coded that was an idiot. But and then finally, a robot must protect its own existence as long as it doesn't conflict with the other laws. So the idea of these laws was a really good thought if you think about robots as just being human. Right. So you're saying we want to make a human brain and turn it loose. Okay, fine. Then the laws are great. But that's not really what we're trying to do. So my question is, what is artificial intelligence? You want to give us?
I mean, artificial intelligence is this idea that a human has created an artificial life form that can essentially think for itself. Well, maybe not just think for itself. Maybe that's where the singularity comes in. But a human creating a device that can think. Let's just say that can think, can process problems, can create. We've seen autonomous devices create art now. They write poetry. We even had one who created an entire film, a movie. Yep. Just by itself.
And to me, the word Russ said that's the whole word is autonomous. Yep. Because originally the way AI was defined was by this guy named Alan Turing, who was this really, really amazing guy back he wrote some papers in the 20s and the 30s. He was writing computer programs for he invented a language to write code in when he didn't even have a computer that would do it, just so he could test his ideas out. But Turing had this, and he didn't really, I don't even think, come up with it. It was called the Turing test, and it was supposedly a test of intelligence. I don't think it's a very good one, to be blunt about it, because basically it was based on an old parlor game where you try to guess something about someone who's behind a screen. So you try to guess their identity. And the idea of this for a test of AI was, could a human judge or a panel of judges figure out who the computer was and who the real humans were by asking questions when they couldn't see who was on the other end of it. And originally they were doing it by typing, and then there was like artificial voices and voice modifications and all this kind of stuff. But the truth is that would be to create a device that was like a human. So there would be like a simulacrum of a human. I don't like that idea, because that's not really what AI leads to in computer science. In computer science, it's about autonomy. Can you make a device that can think for itself? So it's no longer constrained by what you would think of as computer program.
Right.
So if I write a computer program and I say if A, then B, that's one thing. But if you sit down and say if A and it says purple, because it's feeling
synesthetic as that may sound,
it's feeling whimsical. Well, I was sort of using, it's like the what is it? The sky, the moon's not yellow, it's chicken. Bob Dylan. If it starts coming up with things like that, it started to supersede a set of constrained rules and ideas. And this led to neural nets, which were just these sort of simulations of human brains. I wrote genetic algorithm code, which was where each component starts drawing on the DNA of the previous components and develops into new and interesting evolutionary things. And all this stuff then leads to the singularity, which was where does computing power pass us?
Yeah.
And we're almost there. But I'm going to let Russ talk about that.
And the singularity was also invented by another science fiction author, Werner Vinge. And he talked about this idea that what happens to humans when computers become more efficient, they become better but in terms of performance and thinkers, what happens to humans when that happens? And then that gave birth to this whole idea. It's in postmodernism called posthumanism, is how do we deal with that? How do we cope with that? So you look at things like upgrades, mechanical upgrades and implants. And
I want to bolt stuff into my brain so that I can compete with the AI that's coming. But so go look at something like Deep Blue. Deep Blue was IBM's experiment with chess playing. So this was this sort of early computer science exercise was how do you play chess with a computer? And all the initial models of chess playing revolved around rule-based computer science. So this means I look at all the possible moves, I extrapolate forward as far as I can, and I try to find the best solution in that. That started to develop. And I know the first AI course I ever took, one of the problems was to start developing little pieces of chess programs just to try to find better paths through these and to optimize paths and all these kind of things. But that's not AI either. Some of it is. Some of it's the same thing humans do, because sometimes when you make decisions, you really do follow rules. You say, I'm going to go to school because it's better than becoming a drug addict. You optimize a problem, or I don't know, maybe you made a different choice. But then sometimes humans do new things, and they come up with new innovations that no one knows exactly how they came up with it. How do somebody sits down and says, I'm going to dream up some really wacky thing and invent it. And that's a very different problem than just saying, here's a rule.
Oh, yeah.
Do I need to go to school? Should I drive, walk, bike, take the bus, drive right on the train, or should I try to invent a way to fly there? Yeah. And that's, to me, what AI really starts to go towards when it hits the singularity, which is like, how do I supersede humans and now become Leonardo?
Well, because you're kind of removing the confines of logic, right? It's not if A then B as you stated. It's more like, and I love the Bob Dylan quote. The moon's not yellow. It's chicken. And so, as crazy as that may sound, it's to get a machine to think outside of that, out of its own program. It's one hell of a feat. It's something that's not easy.
And then that comes back to Arthur C. Clarke.
Yeah.
Because, so now let's say you develop something that's smarter than us, that has its own set of whatevers, and Arthur C. Clarke also wrote 2001: A Space Odyssey. And the basic premise of 2001: A Space Odyssey was that the neuroses of Dr. Chandra, who coded HAL, got into HAL somehow. And then HAL became a paranoid, delusional, almost schizophrenic device. And so it's possible that AI then becomes neurotic, or like humans becomes irrational.
Or we encode it with those qualities on accident, maybe intentionally. I don't know.
Well, if it invents itself, it still could reach that.
Yeah,
it's certainly possible that you could have a kind of like a virtual mental illness.
Yeah. But there's also something that we want to be careful of when we start talking about hardcore AI and future, possibilities, and that is the type of anthropomorphizing or mechanomorphizing or profile, whatever that
morphing to yourself.
Yeah, anthropomorphization is a psychological term which means to attribute human characteristics to animals. So when you look at a dog and you see it behaving a certain way, we say that dog is hungry. Maybe it's not hungry. Maybe it just wants a ball, or maybe it needs to go to the bathroom.
Well,
Why is it hungry?
This is scarier stuff too,
Yes.
because that means that if it is and the singularity where we surpass us means we're now trying to cast. We're trying to sort of, I don't know.
Maybe understand robots, or
maybe
AI.
we don't, because maybe the behavior of the AI is no longer something we can comprehend. So we say, the computer's behaving in a paranoid way, or it's a racist, but in reality, we don't even understand what it's really trying to do.
And what's interesting is it's so quick for us just to pull the power on it. Well, what happens? What happens when we can't do that anymore?
Exactly,
because it can power itself.
And I mean, and if the thing is so powerful and so fast that unlike Mr. Data. I mean, Mr. Data had that off switch on his back that Lore taught everybody about, and it was like Data was like, "Oh, come on!"
No kidding,
he's like, "I got an off switch." I have a lot of questions about Data too out there. There was a whole bunch of stuff that really bothered me about Data, I mean, and most of it involves sex, but we will get into that here because I was
Tasha Yar. Yeah.
Well, Tasha Yar. I'm like, what? And they're like, why would you build this? I mean, what? Like, this is crazy. But my point is that maybe we can't stop it because the AI simply takes it upon itself and says, I can outcode you, baby.
Yep.
Like, I'm a better hacker than you. I'm a better programmer than you. I'm smarter than you by, like, say my IQ is 375. So I'm like 10 humans grouped together, only I'm a lot smarter. I'm not neurotic, and I don't really have any empathy. Tell them what empathy means, Russ.
Well, empathy means to experience feeling, if you will, or to become an empath, to experience something that someone else is going through, and then you change the way that you behave, like becoming more. I can't even think either. It's the drugs. But you become more caring towards that individual because they might be going through a hard time, or
I don't have that, but
But
I mean,
feeling what other people feel.
My example of empathy is that, like, if you go walk out on the street when you get out of your car, you're probably stepping on some microbes and maybe an ant, or you just stepped on a cute little ladybug that you didn't even see, and you're just walking across the landscape and you have no concept of what's down there below your feet, and you're not paying attention, because if you did, you'd spend all day looking at the ground and you'd walk in front of traffic and get killed. And so you really don't have a lot of empathy at that level. Now, maybe if you realize you stepped on a ladybug and you go, oh, poor little ladybug, I really feel terrible that I stepped on a ladybug. Okay, that's empathy. But the reality is you don't have very much. Now, different people have different levels. Some people are all, and other people just like go, okay, he died. Yeah, sorry. But, I mean, at some point, that becomes really, really scary when you start talking about AI, because AI is not going to have empathy for human beings by default. There's no way that it will. You could say, I'm going to code it in.
Yep.
So you say, oh, we're developing this code, and it has to turn itself. We're going to use Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. Now, Asimov got around this with a plot device. He basically said, because I said so. I mean, he said it was hard-coded into the positronic brain of the robot, so they couldn't possibly violate these rules. And so Data had a positronic brain, too, if you didn't catch that. That's where they got that from. But, I mean, they were trying to somehow say there was this artificial empathy, which is what the 3 rules of robotics were. But I don't know how you do that. And, again, maybe somewhere out there in the distant future, somebody's going to figure out a way to actually build it in. But then it gets in this whole world of sort of cyber ethics. Yep. So it's like, okay, is that fair? So now I'm going to turn you into a slave. I mean, if we said we were going to do that with humans, everybody would be aghast. But I was reading this article, and we've talked about this before, about the sex robots. And you can't look away from the sex robot article. I mean, you see it, it's like clickbait, you read it, there's a legitimate article, and then like it was in the BBC.
And these exist.
Was it BBC?
Yeah, these exist.
And it exists.
Yeah.
And it was like the creepiest human beings on earth. Sorry if you're one of them, but I'm sorry, you were really, really creepy, and I wish I could use more swear words to describe how creepy you were. But the guys that were inventing the robots, but I actually felt empathy. It was like, well, what is this feeling?
For what, the robot or the creators?
The robot.
Oh, all right,
I was looking at that poor robot, and I was going, that poor thing has got to be subjected to this horrible, awful weirdo forever with no recompense, cannot escape. I was like, wow, that would be really awful. And you start talking about this thing's, I know the sex robots weren't theoretically intelligent or artificially intelligent, but what if they were? And then you get to Blade Runner. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Daryl Hannah's character.
Well, and I wanted to bring up Blade Runner because, 1, I love it so much, and 2, there's a new Blade Runner movie that I'm scared to death. Well, I'm scared to death of coming out because I'm like, they could really mess this up, man. Oh man, you could really wreck this thing. It could turn into Superman versus Batman just like that. It's going to be horrible. But Blade Runner, if you've never seen it, go watch it, please. We'll wait. Blade Runner is essentially about androids, which they called replicants. It was based on, and if you've never read Philip K. Dick, please go read Philip K. Dick. The original story in Philip K. Dick has nothing to do with Blade Runner. So the story was called Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?
Yeah.
That story actually has very, very little to do with the Blade Runner concept at all. But it's still a great story. But at the end of that, essentially what was going on was these androids are being set to die because they did not want them to get out of control. So they gave them these termination dates that the minute they were built, they were told they only live this long and then they're going to die. Now, think about our modern world. We would never do this. Because, I mean, you don't want to waste resources building this android and just have it croak on you. Like, that would really be a drag.
Right.
But at the same time, it makes sense. The androids themselves may have done this because they don't want the androids to, or they don't want the AIs to get out of control, which leads us to one more movie reference. Go ahead. You had something to say.
But I think we look at what it means to be human right now, and we all have life expectancies. You know, they're hard-coded in, or, you know, we may wake up one day, take a left instead of a right, and get hit by a bus. But what is modern medicine doing? We're trying to eradicate or erase that. There's a group of people right now called Global Initiative 2045. And what they're saying is by 2045, they are going to eradicate death. And
I might make it.
There's a lot, including people, there's a lot of, let's say, people that are on this group, industry people. And it's pretty wild. I went to one of their conferences in New York, and it's very convincing.
So let me bring up my next movie reference, because we were giving you a whole pile of movie references for today. Logan's Run. So Logan's Run, if you've never read it or watched the movie, it's an old movie from the 70s, but the book is even older. The book is from the 60s, and I love the book. I've read it so many times. The whole premise of Logan's Run was that was achieved, that humans got to the point where they could, live forever, essentially, and it became a bit of a problem because they kept reproducing. There was too many of them. They couldn't feed them, and they decided to turn the management of their society over to AI. And the AI optimized the problem. And it said, you know what? Here's the deal. You could do whatever you want. You could have a good time, but when you turn 31, now, they invented a fake religion. You know, we won't get into that either, but they invented a fake religion to convince everybody that they didn't die. They just got reborn in a nursery. So that way they'd voluntarily go in there and get whacked. You're going to go to Carousel, and what did they say when they were doing that?
I don't remember.
Renew. It was like all the people are floating up into that thing going, renew, renew, and then they all thought they got reborn in the nursery, but hey, I don't think so. But I mean, again, there was this weird problem of AI and humans and optimization. And maybe humans have to make that decision too. If they say, well, everybody's going to live forever, there's no way the planet can support us, we can't spend any money on it because, you know, who would want to do space exploration when we could blow stuff up right here at home? But, you know, we're trying to...
Or outer space versus inner space, where we create this whole VR.
Of course, I keep saying, you know how much stuff you could blow up in outer space? I mean, there's so much more stuff to blow up out there. I mean, if we just got focused on that, we could conquer whole other, you know, places, and then they would spend billions and trillions on it. But instead, you go, we just want to learn about things. You're like, oh, yeah, I can't afford that. We need a bomb. Come on, bigger bomb. I'm sorry, I shouldn't get into politics. We're running out of time, but... As we wrap this up, a whole lot of different AI stuff comes to light in sci-fi, and I was going to mention a couple of other ones. Minority Report, not the movie.
Philip K. Dick.
I don't like the movie, but anything with Tom Cruise in it, I'm going to pass on. But Philip K. Dick wrote the book Minority Report, which was, again, it was a very similar thing about now using AI to predict your behavior. So the AI was far, far better than humans at predicting people's behavior. I want to solve the crime before it happens by predicting that I'm going to walk out of here and do something bad. So they're going to come drag me off and do that. So I put all the movies and the books that we talked about in the show today in the show notes. So check that out on the wiki if you want to see that or read any of that stuff. I really wish you would, because you need to be aware of this stuff if you're not. I put other references to all these different stories that we talked about. Thanks, Russ, for braving the elements and coming out, even though you might not be with us much longer. I'm just kidding. I think he's getting better. I'm getting better.
I'm fine.
I was cueing your line there from the Monty Python.
Oh,
but, you know, I'm getting better.
I'm getting better. I'm a parrot.
Like, come back next week.